Welcome back. We're now on module 2. This module we call Embracing the New Era. It's where we're going to understand the Gen Z in order for you to build your purpose. Why is Gen Z is important? Well, just hang in there. I'm going to tell you a little bit. In the second module of this course, we have 3 objectives. The first one is to uncover and use real insights to define your belief, your obsession, and your mission. It's what I call the bomb. Second, you want to understand how to stay connected to this ever-changing consumer. And third objective of this module is to align your strategic priorities to your brand positioning and make sure that you stay relevant in the minds of your consumer. Those 3 objectives are super important for you to stay focused. In order for you to do this, you have to be true to your purpose. Consumers and having a purpose is not just about having a lofty statement that people can read and it's on the walls of your company. Having a purpose has to be connected to a real consumer problem. And we talked quite a lot in the beginning about the changes that's happening in the world. And the world is calling for a change. And this generation, which is known as the Gen Z, they're people who were born in 1996. They are digital native. I love to say this, the digital function is dead. Why? These kids, this generation, they were born in digital. They don't know what the analog world is. If they look at an analog phone, they don't even know how to use it. So digital is everything. They were born with a phone in their hands. Today, they represent 32% of the world population, and they have more than $142 billion in spending power. Another fun fact about them, in the next 10 to 15 years, they will represent close to 80% of the workforce. So why should you care? Because if you don't pay attention to these consumers, there's a high chance that your brand, your message, or your product will become obsolete. So, what is the role that this generation is playing? They are leading the change, and they're driving the change. They are a voice. They're using social media, digital platform to propel the world forward. There's 3 macro trends that it's influencing how the Gen Zs are behaving. First, there's a tremendous amount of institutional distrust. They don't trust brands. According to Imagine Gen Z report called Brutally Honest Gen Zs, there's a 0% of all participants of the survey said they don't believe brands. They don't trust anything that it is government or a governing body. They don't trust companies. They don't trust institutions. They're taking charge, right? If you look at Greta Thunberg, the movement that she created with climate change, they are leading. Her speech at the UN, it was both scary, it was inspiring, but it called for a change. Also, Gen Zs are saying, if you don't give me a seat at the table, I'm just going to build my own table. Here's an example of Ziad Ahmed, 23 years old, Yale graduate. 5 years ago, when he was 16 years old, he created a company called Juve Consulting. His biggest motto is, don't talk about us, talk to us. His entire organization is built by Gen Zs. He's only 23 years old. He has his headquarters at Times Square in New York City, and last year, approximately the revenue was $5 million. So he didn't have a seat at the table, he just built his own table. However, they're feeling scared. Now that we've seen the macro trends that are influencing this generation and how they're leading the change, let's talk about how they're feeling. About 59% of all Gen Zs that have been studied and interviewed by a Harvard study saying they're feeling more scared than actually hopeful. Why is this? The future is not looking very good. They are tired of empty promises. And they have a reason. There are 6 things that have really had a negative impact on how they feel. First, there's a huge gap in gender inequality. It's climate change, social injustice, student walkouts, women's rights, natural disasters. And when we think we're done, we're now facing a war that was uncalled for. So with the power that they have social media and the advancement of technology, they have a voice. Social media is an extension of self-expression. And they are using social media and the digital platforms more than any other generation has ever done. And they're using to do two things. They want to build systemic trust, and they're asking for social change. I'm going to now walk you through 5 key implications that it is really at the forefront of this generation. First, implication number 1, they want an inclusive culture. What does that mean, being an inclusive culture? They don't want to be stereotyped. It's not about putting everybody in a box and calling everybody the same thing. Also, with the women's movement, they don't want us to ask women to change. Perspectives are the things that needs to change. How we look at problems needs to change, because the problems are going to be there. We have to create a more equal, more equitable workforce. We need to be inclusive and respected of all types of people. They're asking for change on that. Implication number 2, empower pursuits. What does it mean? About 85% of all jobs that will exist by 2030 have not yet been created. If you go back to one of the other data points, that 80% of all Gen Zs are going to be making up about the workforce, and think that by 2030, 85% of jobs have not yet created. In the same Imagine report, the brutally honest report that I mentioned to you, says that 57% of all Gen Zs are going to start their own business in the next 5 years. So what are you doing as a company? What are you doing as a leader? What are you doing as a marketer to invite them in, accept that the world has changed, but also be mindful that what is happening today is not necessarily what's going to be out there in the world in about 10, 15, 20 years. Another data point that's very interesting, 20% of all cryptocurrency are actually owned by 18-year-old kids. So, implication number 3, it's about collective mentality. Collective mentality, it is not about we all hugging and loving each other. It's not about, Woodstock and just, the hipster culture. It is about being yourself unique, but united by a common purpose. It doesn't matter whether, I'm an executive or I'm just a student, as long as we believe in the same purpose, which it could be climate change, we're going to be united. That's what collective mentality is. So brands are platforms where they can create and affect change for this generation. Implication number 4, there is a resistance with this generation against the hero culture. They are tired of superheroes. What they want is human storytelling. It's humanizing your brand. 65% of all teens agree that authenticity, it is at their top values. So it's not just about talking the talk, it is about walking the talk. Because if you're not authentic in what you do, they will just call BS on you. So make sure that your values, your purpose is actually very authentic. Second, youth are they're shunning luxury goods to buy purposeful brands. A great example is Uniqlo. Uniqlo is a purposeful fast fashion brand that has built the entire proposition in the purpose-driven world. They are making things that are way more sustainable. So they are the counterculture of fast fashion. The last piece is well-being as a lifestyle. The definition of sport has changed. Gen Z is the most active generation, with 65% of all Gen Zs are doing some sort of physical activity. So the definition of sport has changed. It's no longer about just competition. It's no longer about just being an Olympic athlete or fighting for the gold medal. It is about being conscious about your well-being, being conscious about how you live your life, and also that's a way that allows Gen Zs to overcome stress, anxiety, and the pressure that the world is imposing on them. So 75% of Gen Zs are managing stress through the usage of physical activity. So just to summarize the 5 key insights. First, it's about inclusive culture. Second, about empowered pursuits. Third, collective mentality. Fourth, the resisting the hero culture. And fifth, it's about your well-being as a lifestyle. So, as we continue to progress into the modules ahead of us, I want to pause here because the next stage is going to be how do I take all of these macro trends to really find my purpose, define my objectives, and start to building an iconic, emotion, and human-centric brand.